Welcome back to some more World and Economica. So, where we last left off, from what I remember, Hal was explaining. Actually, was it Lisa or Hal explaining to Hagana that about the stock market thing and the contest and such? I don't know. It was a long, emotional roller coaster in that one. So let's continue reading. As I spoke, I got off my chair and went to where Lisa had been sitting. For an instant, I was thinking Hagana might object, but she paid me no heed and continued looking at the information display. Those black eyes of hers, with the laptop screen's white light reflected in them, shone like jewels. When I sat next to her, I spun the laptop towards us. Drawn by that, Hagana's face followed it as if she really were a cat. As if she had only now realized where I was, she gave me a brief glance before turning back to the screen. Gee, I wonder which screen exactly. I mean, the laptop screen. Never mind, I'm retarded. Okay, stocks have a price. Weekdays from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., they're traded. When there are lots of buyers, the price obviously goes up. When there are lots of sellers, it goes down. Obviously. Right, but it's hard to predict that obviously. Hagana's eyes were wide with curiosity and looked steadily at me. Why? Because no one really knows whether that company would make a profit or not. Stocks are essentially a piece of ownership of a company. If you buy up all the stock that a company issues, then you become the owner of the company. If the company makes a profit and you control the company, then it's silly if you don't become rich, right? That's why the stock of profitable companies go up, feel me? And if they don't profit, it falls. Exactly. However, whether a company is profitable every single day, no one, not even the company's workers, know. Take Emerald Industries, for example, on the moon and the Earth. They have around 300,000 workers, and if you add in their partners, there's a million. To know every last transaction they make, it's impossible. Then what do we do? Don't know. Everyone guesses and trades. Hagana looked up from the laptop and glared at me. Lies. It's true. But then, Hagana said that, then looked back at the screen, then back at me. Everyone is betting money on this, aren't they? Yep, that's why they're guessing it very seriously. When Lisa, sitting across the table, heard this, she gave a little laugh. There's a number of ways to guess. One is to research the company and decide whether it's profitable or not. This Emerald Industries is the only company that can repair the space elevators. Every year, a huge amount of money is sure to come in. On top of that, they're involved in much of the development of the lunar surface. It's an ultra top-ranked company. They also made the dome. That was from when we went to buy clothes. When I thought about her remembering that conversation, it made me a bit happy. Yep, they also made the two skies. Amazing. Yes, it's an amazing company and everyone thinks it'll be a profitable. Then we just have to buy this? Basically. But it's obvious that it's profitable, so everyone buys it. When everyone buys it, the price goes up. When that's the case, the price can go up past the price where it should be. See, there's this P/E here. Yeah. If stock is ownership of the company, if a company has 100 shares, then one share would be worth about 1/100th of the company. Yes. Now, the profit of that company divided among the shares would give an indication of whether the share price was high or not. I played with the laptop screen and enlarged the selected part. If one share of a company was earning only 10 moles, but the stock price was 101 million moles, while another company was earning only 10 moles but priced at 20 moles, which would you buy? Lisa was already clutching her head in her seat. Meanwhile, Hagana, without the slightest bit of doubt, looked at me directly and spoke. The 20 moles stock. 20 moles stock. Right, for the amount of money paid out, the amount of money earned is different. No matter how great the company, if the stock price continues climbing faster than its profits, then it will inevitably hit an inappropriate price. And I'm supposed to predict that with math? Nope. When I said that, Hagana's brows furrowed. It probably seemed like I was being spiteful or explaining things in a roundabout way, but I was sure Hagana didn't feel as upset as she looked. For some reason, I just felt that. But now, you've got a sense of what stocks are, right? Just the just the parts you explain, Hal. Hagana decided to change her tone halfway through on her own. Lisa had an extremely happy smile, and of course Hagana didn't miss that. She made little embarrassed glances at Lisa, but since Lisa got up from her chair, she looked back at me in relief. So, in general, predicting the stock involves us deciding whether it will be profitable or not. But like I said before, no one knows what's going on every day, let alone next month, next year. There have been ultra top-ranked companies that had an accident, paid a deathly amount of compensation, and went out of business. That happens quite a bit. That's why everyone uses a different method of predicting. Math? Aha. Calm down. When I laughed, Hagana made a face like I had flicked her nose with my finger. Then she came back to herself and glared at me. From the pout on her lips, she was saying that was embarrassing. If I don't explain some other things first, it's hard to explain why. By my words, Hagana hesitated a little, but eventually nodded. This here is the graph of the stock price. Returning to the information page, I indicated the zigzagging line in the center of the screen. Every day the stock price is plotted and the points are connected. They call these charts. It's called choppy. Exactly. But because Emerald Industries is profitable, it's overall going up in value. It's all choppy. Going up in value. Yeah. For other companies, it doesn't work that way. For example, this one or this, and so on. Yeah. So there's as many graphs as there are kinds of stocks at the times of trading. Thousands of stocks, decades of time. And so, some bored fellow noticed one thing. In the center of that chart, there's a few distinctive things. Hagana stared at me, then looked at the chart on the screen. The most famous one would be this, head and shoulders thing. See how in the center there's a mountain, and on both sides there are small mountains? Isn't it like a person's head and shoulders? Somewhat. When this shape comes up, the big mountain is often the peak for the price, and in the future, the chances it's going to slide down are high. Really? That's what they say. Don't get mad. I'm saying that from looking at past charts. There's a way to predict what will happen in the future. Hagana looked like a kid used to being tricked and being very cautious, but she managed to nod. It was there that Lisa, who had stood up from her chair to do something by the sink, came over with cocoa. Anyway, the method of predicting this or that with the graph uses a form of math. For example, Hagana's expression changed. See how there's a smooth line behind the jagged ones? That's also a stock price. That's called a moving average. For example, if you start on May 1st and from there take the last 30 days of prices and then plot the average. Then next to it, on May 2nd, you took the last 30 days of prices and plot that. When you do that, the line becomes quite smooth. Yeah. Even if the daily movements are really zigzaggy, when you average them like this, you can sort of tell whether it's overall going up, down, or sideways. And there's a way of trading where you trust in those big movements. If the big line is trending upwards, then it feels like it's going to go up forever, doesn't it? Hagana looked at the graph and nodded sincerely. So there's a way of trading where guys with too much time on their hands look at charts of companies over the days, and by looking at the moving averages, predict whether things will go up or down. That kind of calculation isn't hard. I'm supposed to do that? Well, you could, but given enough time, even I could do that. Analyzing charts was apparently the first thing beginners in stocks do. When you open an account, you can use a tool that has tons of famous charts analyzing tools built into it for free. But before I started trading, I started using it for a few things and was sure that none of them was useful. So the thing that I want you to try to do is one step beyond this stuff. None of them was useful stuff. Beyond? Yeah, did you ever see the space elevator service diagrams? Hagana blinked at my question. The space elevators? Yeah, that thing shows predictions about whether trash would strike it, right? Yeah. Physics can predict to insane accuracy the movements of a tiny lump that's flying around in orbit at a few tens of kilometers a second. It's predicting the future, right? I don't really know much about physics, but probably yes. If that's the case, there seems to be some that think that we might be able to predict the movements of stock prices with math, just like with heavenly bodies. Hagana looked quietly at me and then at the screen. So essentially, find formulae that draw this graph? Exactly. Whether it's possible, I don't know. However, in the world that there are those who are making huge profits with such a method. Can it be done? Hagana's question was natural. Even myself, I was half believing, half doubting. However, it was better than doing nothing. Infinitely better. Even if we didn't know whether we'd reach our destination, as long as we didn't move, we'd better get there. Because of that, I myself ran away from my whole village. I don't know. When I answered, Hagana grimaced and looked at me. Feeling Hagana's gaze on my cheek, I looked at the screen and spoke. But it's not about whether we can or can't. Eh? We have no choice but to do it. In the corner of my eye, I could see that Hagana was stunned. Her mouth tried to move and say something, but words didn't form, and her lips just chewed the air. Besides, the prize is 200,000 moons, no entry fee. Is there a reason we shouldn't participate? Hagana had been lamenting over how her strength at math was so powerless at solving real-world problems. This investing contest was definitely become a tiny led to Hagana finding a way forward. Of course, I would reap rewards myself. Well, ain't that great. Rewards myself. While looking at me, she held her breath. From there, she looked at the computer screen out of the corner of her eye and looked back at me. Her face was frozen stiff like she had been left in the mother of all freezers. However, Hagana was staring at me. Those black eyes kept looking steadily at me. The moon wasn't a nice, friendly place that carried people who didn't try to walk on their own feet. Ah, great. Their own feet, huh? However, those who tried could have their hands held. I gazed back at Hagana, and then Hagana said this. Out of 5,421. What? I had managed to derive all the way to the 3,227th. There wasn't one I couldn't solve. It took a full 10 seconds to realize she was talking about the math theorems that she had continued to derive in her room for the longest time. Hagana spent that time with determination. Or perhaps for a girl who had been sold to the moon, it took that much courage. Therefore, it should be solvable. Lisa had said that Hagana was a serious girl. I had thought that she was just stubborn, but when I realized that Hagana was clutching her fists fiercely beneath the table, I accepted Lisa's words. It should be solvable. Hagana repeated that and closed her eyes. I sensed strength in that pose, because what was I going to say? Oh yeah, because I knew just how defiant Hagana was. God damn. There's gotta be a way to keep myself up. Just how defiant Hagana was. When she opened her eyes, Hagana took a clear step forward. Teach me all the rules. Accepting those words, I answered. You got it. I had this feeling that Lisa, who had sat on the sofa after making the cocoa, was smiling as she watched us. However, even though Hagana asked me to teach her, there were very few things that I could explain using words. It was because I was the type of trader who looked at the prices every day, read the news, and then wrote on the feel of the market. If you asked why I made a trade, I had nothing to say other than I looked at how everything felt. I had thought about explaining everything about a trading system once through, but once I thought about how I had to explain various things, it became a huge job. Even just going through the list of typical indicators that had an effect on stocks was a huge amount of material. From interest and exchange rates, energy prices, things that affect stocks on a broad level, to gold and silver prices, to soybeans and wheat on the commodities markets, then there were the major market indices, whatever the word is, indices, indical. Oh, what the hell? I don't even know that word. Pronounce that as dividend payments. By the time I explained the minutiae of or whatever that is, of different stock types and ownership ratios, I was exhausted. Once I thought about it, I realized I had pretty much explained in one sitting everything I had spent months researching. Hagana had an unbelievable memory and remembered it all. What's this? What? How is that related to the thing from before? She asked as we went. And then she quickly absorbed it all. If Lisa hadn't said to call it a day, Hagana might have squeezed information out of me all night. On that note, the next day I awoke to the sound of Hagana knocking on my door. Really? Knocking on the door. Oh, teach me what comes next. Hagana spoke while holding a terminal and looking at me standing at the door. While Lisa made breakfast, I answered Hagana's unending stream of questions, occasionally getting disoriented. There were plenty of things that I only faintly remembered, or had just heard somewhere and learned briefly. Hagana seemed to believe that any new vocabulary might become a hint, so she was constantly questioning and entering things into the terminal. Deriving a proper solution required proper assumptions. Hagana's way of thinking was very mathematical. I have one last question. What? When those words came out of Hagana's mouth, I was slumped, exhausted in the chair and facing the ceiling. Let's say I come up with a way to predict the future using math. Sure. Then what would Hal do? It was a pretty cutting question, but not one I hadn't thought about. If you find a perfect solution, I'm useless to you after all. But right now, there are 40 days of trading. I doubt you'll suddenly come upon an answer tomorrow, so until you find it, I'd probably be of use. You'll tell me how you think this stock price will move in the future using your math. And in my own way, I'll make decisions based on the method that had been making money for me. If we both think that is going to work, doesn't that sound strong? Of course, if you later come up with the perfect solution. I hunched my shoulders and joked. Then why don't you manage my money? I don't believe that Hagana would suddenly find the ultimate answer to something that people have searched over 100 years for. But I think she might get someplace that was good enough, and that good enough should be able to bring in an amazing amount of profit. Plus, with just winning this contest, it'll be a great boon to this church, Hagana herself, and myself too. Hagana's black and frighteningly intelligent eyes looked at me and blinked. Then, shifting her gaze quickly, she spoke. Got it. Which part? Both. Hagana answered and then drank the coffee that Lisa made for breakfast, long cold. I'll predict using math. You're going to decide using your own way. And if I'm right, I'll increase Hal's monetary worth. Exactly. When I laughed, Hagana huffed through her nose. It wasn't that she was angry, but she had that disagreeable part to her, so she probably just didn't feel like laughing out of politeness. But the contest comes first. We've got to win this. Yeah. If we don't start today, we won't be able to use the full 40 days. Today I'll just trade on my own. That okay with you? I don't mind, but... What? If I have a question, can I ask? Well... Yeah, why not? It was a surprisingly meek way of asking. Even though she was still glaring as she always did, there was something different about it. What? When I replied with that, Hagana furrowed her brows angrily and spoke. When you're in front of the computer, you don't look like you're listening to people talking. And I also really hate having something bother me when I'm thinking, so I'm asking if I can still ask. Are you stupid? It seemed like she was about to add the familiar words to the end of her sentence. Instead, I just smiled naturally. For Hagana to be worried about something like that, it was like a miracle. Yeah, it's probably fine. Probably? Hagana's face darkened more as she asked. I spoke in a bit of a mean tone. If you get close in the wrong way, my hand might just move on its own. I swung my arm in the air. Hagana apparently recalled when she had accidentally hit Lisa in the face yesterday. She made a really disgusted face, but the stubbornness quickly returned. When that happens, I'll hit back. Yeah, the shin you kicked out is still swollen. Then nothing to say. Hagana winced and looked like she was about to cry for an instant. The way she would do things and then regret them later, Hagana was definitely like a kid when it came to anything but studying. So, when you're getting my attention, use something other than your feet. Nothing to say. Oh, well. Hagana gave me a hard glare before nodding slowly. Got it. Great, and it's about time to trade. I went back to facing the screen, while Hagana sat on the other side of the table looking at me. Hey, you want to watch the trading? Hagana hesitated a bit and then nodded. Alright, let's see. When I had looked around on the net beforehand, I learned one thing. The investment contest virtual marketplace had a number of strange... Oh shit. Number of strange stock symbols. Let me... Yeah, let me just read through one thing. Marketplace, yeah, I got it. For example, the names range from things you could more or less guess what they did, like pharma products or material industries, to simple symbols like A, B, and C. On the net, there were plenty of theories, from them not finishing the contest in time and to how there must be a reason things were named that way. Also, information that would be written for one stock often wasn't written for another. The stocks that I looked through weren't those strange stocks, but the ones that seemed to be copying stocks that actually existed. It seemed that everyone else was also choosing to trade on the more approachable stocks, and there was lively trading at great volume with the stocks with familiar symbols. The instant I began to trade, I opened a number of browser windows. While gazing at the price movements, I kept switching windows until my eyes started to ache. I wasn't grasping those movements precisely, but when I tracked multiple prices at the same time, I could start to see a kind of pattern. This stock moved quickly. This one reacted slowly, or it's reacting to the exchange rate, or moving with the index. I started to see these kinds of little quirks. What I latched onto the most was a stock that moved with the indices. Even in this fidgetous market, just like the real ones, there were indices prepared that let you get a feel for the general market sentiment. For example, in the real world, amongst the stocks shown on the lunar stock exchanges quotes, a core 150 would be chosen. Their prices averaged into what was called the Lunar Stock Exchange Price Index. This expressed the overall price movements of the market and was an important reference for stock trading. In the fidgetous market, an average of the most important stocks was taken and updated in real time. The stock I found was a simple one that chased after the index when the index would go up or down. I had no idea who was doing it, but it was probably a pattern where someone traded on the index using some information, and then everyone else noticed and followed. That stock was a fidgetous bank, and its fidgetous accounts were extraordinary good. It's quite grandiose to say it, but it felt like that the price had gone up too far. Essentially, it was becoming a struggle between the guys who think the price will drop and the ones who think the price will keep rising. And that kind of struggle had a bit of a complicated system around it. In stocks, you could trade with the cash you have, or you could trade on credit by buying on margin or short selling stocks. For example, if you bought on margin, you borrowed money and trade for more than you're worth. If you only had 100 mules, you could borrow 200 mules and buy 300 mules worth of stocks. Then, if that stock went up to 10%, you'd get 30 mules in profit. At the end of the trade, you just return the 200 mules borrowed. That would mean that you earned 3 times the profit compared to using just 100 mules. And of course, if you lose, it's the reverse. There was also a way to sell on credit. There, you didn't borrow money, but borrowed stocks. For example, You'd borrow some stocks and sell them for 100 mules. Afterwards, when the stock dropped to 70 mules, you bought it back. Once you did that, you returned the shares you borrowed. In your hands fell the spread between the 100 mules you got from selling the stock and the 70 you spent buying it back. Using this method of short selling, you could profit even if the prices were dropping. Of course, if the price went up, then you'd have to buy it back at a higher price and you'd lose. The amount of margin buying and short selling was normally shown publicly. If everyone thought a stock would go up, then margin buying would increase, whereas in the opposite case, short selling would increase. On top of that, margin buyers would eventually need to sell, and short sellers would eventually need to buy. Plus in life, I can't even catch up because my hand slipped. Plus in life, borrowings came with interest. Money or stocks, it didn't matter. Thanks to that, if a stock that had been sold short a ton had a steady price for a long time, then the people being burned by interest would have to buy shares back in the near future. There'd be a chance the stock would go up soon. That was how you think about things. The stock I found had quite a bit of volume, both on margin and short selling. That was probably because the price moved violently. Relatively speaking, there were about double the number of short sellers as margin buyers. So there were more people praying that the stock would go down. In most cases, betting with the crowd was how you lost. The reason was because the ones who had already sold short had put their trade out of the world to sea, and their opponents were looking at that before deciding. The guy who moved last in rock, paper, scissors would win. Even looking at the trading records from yesterday and the day before, the fact that their daily trading volume was increasing was a good indicator. It reeked at everyone getting together and plotting a way to ruin the days of the short sellers. The more short sellers there were, the more stock would have to be bought when the price rose to a dangerous point. And when the price went through the roof, the slower the short sellers were at buying back their shares, and thus the greater the damage. All of them would start buying, and the price would explode. This was a situation called a short squeeze, but no one knew when it would happen, nor whether it would happen. The fact that the short interest had been piling up meant that the stock was being bought for that match, and the buyers might be running out of money. If people weren't trading on the possibility of the short squeeze, then the stock price would naturally decrease. When it fell, the margin buyers would get afraid of losses and start selling. When that happened, it'll plummet further. The further it drops, the more timid the buyers got. The end result was that the short sellers would win. Ultimately, I thought of stocks as this kind of mental battle. Information about a company was important, of course, but I felt that it was all about deciding in the midst of the market sentiment whether the bulls or the bears were strong. That's a nice economy US reference. The bull or the bear. Kind of reminds me of the Mad Money show I used to watch back then. We're strong. For those guys who'd buy a stock and hold it for 5 to 10 minutes, not minutes, years. For 5 to 10 years, I think it was good to look at the performance of the company. But even if you did that, it'll take 10 years to finally have the stock price increase 5 to 10 times. Meanwhile, if you just build up to 100% profits every day, in 10 years, it'll be an amazing amount. If I was going to fulfill my dreams of gathering the riches of the moon, this was the only way. I latched onto the stock and read the market sentiment. The sellers were in the lead, and looking at the board where buy/sell orders were posted. There were a number of large ones on the selling side. Because the sell orders came up on the top of the board and the buy orders mirrored on the bottom, it felt top heavy, as if it was being forced downwards. Even now, the price looked like it would collapse, but it didn't. It just wouldn't go down. There were probably false orders. The orders were displayed on the board even though there was no real intention of completing them. The orders were placed to put pressure on everyone. when there was a huge number of orders on the selling side, everyone think that the stock was about to go down. So then sales started happening, and the price would start going down as expected. It was ostensibly illegal, but there was no way to prove it. It was about to go down. So then sales started happening and the price would start going down as expected. It was ostensibly illegal, but there was no way to prove it. Went down as expected, really. It was ostensibly illegal, but there was no way to prove it. Because they would just say that they changed their minds and canceled their orders. But if someone with a lot of capital managed to see through that trick, I kept staring at that stock. I might have been staring at it for 2 hours. Then, right before 12:10 8 p.m., at the point that felt like the lowest price of the slowly declining stock I bought, 1,000 shares at 267 moves, a bit under 27k moves. It seemed like a lot, but compared to all the available capital, it was a tiny thing. It wasn't as much aimed at making money, but more like buying just a check. A while later, the morning trading. A while later, the morning trading ended. However, I didn't take a break. I had to check on the movements of the other stocks that I had earmarked. Holding the mouse, I opened another window. It was then that my eyesight suddenly shook and my body felt caught in an earthquake. Alright, I'm going to be ending this here for now. So, next part, let's see why Hal got surprised there. So, like, comment, and subscribe, and see you guys later. Have a good day.